Hey there, and welcome to this week's edition of The Wrap, simple news summaries for busy people. Now, we're presenting you with a sober edition today. That's because the facts necessitate it, rather. Things are bad COVID-wise. Take heart, though. We can stay safe and stop it from being any worse. We tell you how. Plus, we'll bring you this week's funnies, anyone seen Ramaphosa's iPad, and what we can be grateful for. So, let's dive into your weekly simple news update brought to you by me, Verashni Pillay, and the Explained Occursa team. First up, our take. Take action, Gauteng. This is not a wave, this is a tsunami. Those are the words a doctor working at a private healthcare facility used to describe the deadly increase in Gauteng's COVID-19 infections. By now, you may have heard just how bad things are in South Africa's most populous province. The daily infection rate is exceeding 10,000. Way worse than what was seen in the first and second waves. Everyone is being affected, and no one expected it to be this bad. Now, the doctor who spoke to News 24 on condition of anonymity said, with the hospital overrun, there just aren't enough resources to care for everyone. People are waiting outside. Ambulances are standing in queues at hospitals waiting to offload the sick. So basically, South Africa, we're seeing the nightmare scenarios that played out early on in hospitals in Italy and New York, with doctors having to decide who gets to live and who has to die. As the doctor said, we are trying to help the survivors versus every sick person because we can't help everyone. Remember, that's at a private healthcare facility. Can you imagine how bad it is at public healthcare? Now, another healthcare professional said that new people were being put into beds barely 30 minutes after the previous occupant had died. Shabir Mahdi, professor of vaccinology at Wits University, and Johnny Meyers, emeritus professor in public health medicine at the University of Cape Town, wrote in the Daily Maverick that the shortage of beds in Gauteng resulted from poor planning and was being exacerbated by the closure of the 1,000-bed Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. This was due to a fire that happened in April. Now, the hospital's reopening keeps being pushed back. Plus, we don't even have the makeshift facilities at NASDAQ that we did during the first two waves. Ironically, they were underused because the wave we were expecting didn't hit us back then, and they were expensive to run, so they were shut down. Plus, there's a delay in completing special treatment facilities, which are dedicated centers that were going to be set up close to hospitals to handle overrun. These would have housed at least 1,400 beds, and that has also made matters much worse. So, as much as we hate to be the bearer of bad news, it is our responsibility to inform you that this is the reality unfolding in our country right now. It's not looking good. And while you might say President Ramaphosa needs to introduce stricter restrictions in Gauteng, we're here to tell you don't wait for him. At this point, it's about what you need to do to protect yourself and your loved ones. We know you're tired, South Africa. We all are. But young or old, you need to take every precaution you can to keep safe. COVID-19 is in the air, and we don't know how long it's going to take for things to get better. But rest assured, it will get better. You just need to play your part. Moving on to the big story. South Africa's first woman Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, who has been at the helm since November 2020, has been doing a sterling job at one of our crucial institutions. Every year, the AG releases a report which tells us how municipalities are spending their money. Usually, the news is not particularly good. South Africa has 278 municipalities, and most are very poorly managed in terms of finances. This week, she presented a rather special report to Parliament's watchdogs, the Standing Committee for Public Accounts, otherwise known as SCOPA. These guys monitor all things related to government expenditure. But this wasn't the usual municipal report. It was dedicated to just COVID-19 related spending, like PPE. The depressing news is that even with the pandemic, municipalities still did a shocking job on procurement. Over 80% of our municipalities had incurred irregular expenditure of 26 billion rand, while only 27 municipalities received clean audits for the 2019-2020 financial year. This means that more money was unreasonably spent or was not processed in keeping with the relevant legislation. Many of South Africa's municipalities are in a bad state. Frequent service delivery protests make this evident, and often financial mismanagement and corruption are to blame. One example highlighted by Business Day was that municipalities are paying consultants exorbitant fees, as much as 1 billion rand, to compile their annual reports and financial statements. But these still have not been up to standard, so that's a waste of money. Maluluke said that at least 74% of municipalities made recurring use of consultants, and the reports submitted were not adequately reviewed. There was a lack of documentation coupled with poor project management, all of which, she said, is wasteful expenditure. So much for those consultants. Not only do they not get your financials up to standard, they end up being wasteful expenditure in and of themselves. Now, Had it not been, she also highlighted how some municipalities, specifically 2 in KwaZulu-Natal, were paying for services that had not been rendered. She said money was paid to these so-called ghost employees, adding that more needs to be done to control the municipality's internal payroll. Now, had it not been for the AG and the hard work of her team, this information would be lost and those responsible would never be held to account. So, even if the numbers depress you, just know that they are being revealed for the greater good of our democracy. With local government elections coming up this year, there's an opportunity for citizens to hold to account those messing up their municipalities. And, judging by the ruling party's performance in the last local government elections, South Africans are certainly not afraid to punish poor governance at the polls. The party suffered its worst defeat since the end of apartheid and lost its majority in key metros across the country in the last local government election. Moving on to your briefs. What is South Africa without some light-hearted mockery of our president's sometimes comical ways? This week's missing iPad mystery had South Africa in stitches. Before a press conference at the National Ports Authority in Cape Town, Ramaphosa misplaced his iPad and wondered out loud if it had been stolen. Ramaphosa could be heard saying rather calmly, all things considered, "Somebody has decided to dispossess me of my iPad. Can I have my iPad, please?" So they stole it. I had my iPad. Do you know where they took my iPad to? Oh, shame, Cupcake. We see how distressed you were, but also, wow, imagine a whole president losing his iPad. What if it got into the wrong hands? Thankfully, after an awkward 2 minutes, Ramaphosa was repossessed of his device. It also took South Africans' Twitterati a whole 2 minutes to drop the jokes and memes on the situation. Here's a funny one from South African politician Simon Grunrod. President Obama, quote, "There is no excuse for not trying." President Kennedy, quote, "If not us, who? If not now, when?" President Kaunda, "Ambition never comes to an end." And President Ramaphosa, "I'm waiting for my iPad." Lol. Moving on to some education news, we're pleased to hear that teachers across South Africa have started receiving their vaccines this week. The plan is to vaccinate over 500,000 teachers over 14 days. That means the sooner this is done, the quicker students can get back on track with their schooling, which has been stressful for teenagers and kids the past 15 months. The greater conundrum now, however, is that while teachers are out getting their vaccines, students, in public schools specifically, are left waiting or are attending school every alternate day. Experts say this arrangement is likely to have a very negative effect on learners in the years to come. Experts told Sunday Times that in order to mitigate this problem, primary school pupils who are due back on July 26th should return to class immediately instead of waiting for holidays to be over, while the Education Department develops a credible catch-up plan for the learners. High school learners will be attending class on alternate days also. Education Minister Angie Motshekga has, however, said that once all teachers have been vaccinated, there will be no reasons for teachers to stay home and that things should get back on track. She said that only the National Coronavirus Command Council will instruct the closure of schools if it needed to do so, if the third wave gets really bad, and we hope it doesn't. So as a parent, try your best to support your children through this. We know it's tough to juggle everything at once, but diligence and encouragement will give your child that extra boost to stay ahead. Even if staying at home on alternate days does sound kind of attractive, it's going to be super bad for them in the long run. Moving on, a rush for diamonds, we mean crystals. When your country's ground is rich in minerals like ours, with gold and platinum and diamonds, I'm sure you've wondered at least once if your own backyard is a hidden gold mine. No? Just us? Well, apparently not. Thousands of residents in the Kwahlati region in KwaZulu-Natal flocked to a field after something shiny was spotted on the ground. It was thought to be a diamond, so locals began digging and many had found shiny rocks, assuming their fortunes had changed forever. But to their dismay, and honestly ours too, scientists confirmed that the shiny rocks were quartz, not diamonds. Quartz are basically crystals. They have no value, but are sometimes considered to have healing properties. It may have been a glimmer of hope for the population of nearly 300,000 people, where jobs are scarce and poverty is rife. But sometimes all that glitters is not always gold, or diamonds in this case. Onto some international and rather distressing news. We told you previously how South African club rugby player Lindani Mayeni was shot dead by police in Hawaii in April this year. Now, Mayeni was living in the U.S. island state with his American wife and their 2 children. At the time, we told you there was huge question marks over what went wrong and how he was shot, as police had released very selective footage that did not explain the whole story while defending their actions. One police boss said his men were fighting for their lives. Well, more details have now emerged, obtained and released by legal family representatives, and it seems Mayeni was effectively murdered. Raw footage from a doorbell recording shows Myeni entering a building after removing his shoes at the entrance. He is wearing a traditional ceremonial Zulu headband and may have confused the building to be a similar-looking public temple next to it. Myeni was a deeply spiritual person. He then interacts with a couple who loudly claim that he is trying to break in while he repeatedly apologizes. The woman screams hysterically and calls 911, reporting Myeni, who had revealed his identity and said he is South African. Myeni is seen leaving the house and apologizing to the residents. As he walks away, the 911 operator confirms to the woman that the police are on the way. The police, upon arrival, attack Myeni, tase him, and shoot him dead while he tries to defend himself. Only afterwards do they announce that they are the police. Myeni was unarmed and did not have any weapons, nor did he threaten them, the woman confirmed to the 911 operator. The couple later testified that Myeni never came closer than 1 to 2 meters and made no physical contact. The landlord has confirmed in a deposition that no property was taken, missing, or otherwise disturbed. So, it's a fairly horrific story. Myeni was a gentle giant, and it seems the color of his skin trumped all other protocol. His 29-year-old wife, Lindsay Myeni, is demanding justice for his death in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement. She said, 100%, I know in my heart if it was a white man, if it was me, she's a white woman, I'd still be alive. I'd be walking around. On to some spiritual news. Mpepo, it's a sacred African herb often used for ceremonies small and large. Like umembeso, a ritual where the groom presents the bride's family with gifts before the wedding in Zulu weddings. For believers, lighting the herb and smelling its aroma puts them in touch with their ancestors and fills them with peace and calm. But many modern believers don't have time to draw on the herb in their daily life. Enter Gugu Majola, a Sangoma who was inspired by the frequent use of Mpepo at an initiation school and wondered what else it could be used for. After feeling a go-ahead spiritually, she started experimenting and found the herb can be consumed and used in candles and soaps. Now she has a thriving business aiming to help believers use the herb every day and combating the negative stereotypes associated with it. It presents a small opportunity to cleanse the bad energy away and start every day afresh. Everyone go buy as many candles as you can so we can collectively cleanse the country's energy. I think we all need it at this point. On some political news, over the next 2 days, suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule will appear at the Johannesburg High Court to challenge the ANC's decision to suspend him and for the court to declare the party's infamous step-aside rule unconstitutional. Now, we're sure you remember, but last year Magashule was charged by the state with fraud and corruption relating to the multi-million rand Free State asbestos case. Because he was criminally charged as per ANC's rules, he would have had to step aside or face suspension. Now, Magashule, to find himself, instead refused to step aside. He was consequently suspended by the party. He was not happy about this, so he attempted to counter-suspend Ramaphosa himself and at the same time challenge the ANC step-aside rule. Where does this guy get the energy to be so brazenly defiant on a national stage while most of us are out here trying to overcome imposter syndrome? Magashule has a steadily diminishing troop of supporters, one of which is former President Jacob Zuma himself. Over the next 2 days, his case will be heard by no-nonsense judges, Jody Colopin, Edwin Molahleli, and Cherise Wiener. We are keeping an eye on it. Now, onto some interesting fashion news. If you were the head of the South African National Defence Force and were given a budget of 200 million, what would you spend it on? Improving conditions, equipment, compensation? We think so, but instead, the SANDF has decided to spend this huge amount of money on army uniforms. Do the police fashion come at them for their poor taste in clothes? No. Actually, the army says that changing its uniform is a step towards restoring their dignity in the country. They're also hoping to attract more youth with their new fashion shift, and they say that the clothing currently is not suitable for women, and they want it to be more female body profile friendly. But critics, especially in opposition, are saying that it is a waste of money. Now, we think that NDF has a lot more to deal with than worrying about the uniforms that will cost 200 million rand, which can be used to upgrade the equipment they need to fight the pandemic in many ways. In your final story, if you're a Joburger with a taste for the hipster artsy lifestyle, then you know that 7th Street in Melville is the place to be, with its vibey and arty shops, vintage and good food at a reasonable price. It's no doubt that it's been named as one of the coolest streets in the world. Don't believe us? Head to Hell's Kitchen for a beer or explore the cool containers at 27 Boxes and you'll know what we're talking about. Now, Melville was placed 12 out of 30 cities across the world by Time Out magazine. Cape Town came at 22 and the winning city is Smith Street in Melbourne. That's great for Australia, but we'll stick to Melville. Well, that's it from us at The Wrap. Simple news summaries for busy people. Remember to tell your friends to subscribe. They can go to explain.coza/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from us.